Okay, so let's look at the DVD logo, the bouncing DVD logo. I mean, we've seen this before. I'm sure you guys have seen this. There's a couple things that we could do from this though. So basically, we have an object, and we just think of it as this logo that is moving across the screen. Okay. There's a couple ways that we could do this that I've already like played around with, but I want us to start thinking. We're going to just think of it in terms of a rectangle first. The rectangle will be a placeholder, and eventually we're going to start adding that DVD picture on it. Okay, so let's start building that. Okay, getting it to move across the screen to bounce, have the appearance of it bouncing off of each edge. Okay, all right. So to do this, we're going to kind of do the same thing with this as what we did. We're going to create an object, but we need to start thinking in terms of different pieces that we would need. Okay, so when I look here, I have an X and a Y position for this. I have a width and a height for this logo. I have also an X speed and a Y speed, and that's actually kind of like my direction that I'm going and how fast I'm going. Okay, so then each time I hit one of the edges, I need to switch the direction that I'm going in either my X or my Y direction. So we need to start building that. Okay, so let's start a new one. Save that. And this we're going to call initial DVD logo. Okay, and for this, let's build our object. So let's just call it logo. Okay, now for our logo, we know that we're going to have to set up for certain things. So I'm going to build this as an object. Okay, to start off, we're going to have an X value, right? Now I would say that let's just start kind of building this slow. If I have my logo, I could do almost anything up to the width of my canvas, and that would be right here. Okay, let's actually make that a little bit bigger. See if that gives us full. Okay, all right. So we have that. Let's do our Y. Okay, and then let's just do our display. And we could start actually when you're creating these, you could start small and start adding features, which is a good way for us to get to see stuff happening. So let's just have a rectangle, and we started at this.x, this.y. Let's say that it has a width of, how about 70 and 50. Okay, now I don't see anything because in my draw I have to actually call it. So I could say logo.display. Okay, there it is. Okay, now the rectangle is just going to be a placeholder. Let's go ahead and just add a no stroke for right now. There it is. Okay, so there's my display. Now anything that is an actual value that I'm using, it is better for me to be able to change. Now, some of these, if you know you're never going to change it, you could probably leave it. If you think that there's any time that you might end up changing the value or wanting the value to change, that's when you want to use a variable. Okay. And I'm kind of thinking that, what would be cool is when it's bouncing, maybe I'm actually increasing or decreasing the size a little bit. I think that would be kind of cool to do. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to give it a width. I'm going to do width of 70, and then I'm just replacing this dot width. I'm going to do that again with the height, 50. And then I'm going to replace this dot height. Okay, so I didn't really change much except for adding a couple more attributes in here. All right, now there is problems. I am going to end up having this every time that I display that it could. Let's run where we get onto the edges. Oops, that was one. There was one. And we don't really want that. When we're looking at the bouncing DVD logo, we never see it actually go off. So we need to do a little bit of math. When we're at the edge, we never want to do, if we're using the top left, 0 would be fine, because if it's at 0, it's right at this left edge. But if I was at the full width, then I'm all the way over here and it's extending off. So I actually want to do this X value. I'm going to have to subtract. Now, I can't mention this here. I could mention it here, but I can't mention it here because the width attribute doesn't exist until this whole logo thing was created. So I can't reference stuff above or below outside of a function. Now, a function can get called at a different time. This display does not get called here. It gets called when I call it down in the draw. If I never had this, there's no display. Okay, so it's not calling the X position, the Y position, the width and height in the setup. It's calling it when it gets called down here in the draw. So I can't do like width minus this width here. Now I could put a hard value in there. I could say width minus 70, width minus 50. Now there are other ways around this. We're not really going to learn that much in depth for like class structure. That's computer programming too. Okay, so I could do this. This would fix that little bug that it would make sure that it's never going to be off. So let's just go ahead and keep resetting it to see. So it's starting in a different place. Let's look here. I don't know if it always starts. Oh, this one always starts in the corner. We don't need to start in the corner. We can start anywhere. But we now have that, okay? So now let's actually start thinking of the logic of having it move around, okay? Now, we have done this before with a number of things on using X values and Y values and conditionals. So all we need to do is we just need to kind of put this in there. I need to check the left edge can't be less than this left side. The right edge can't be greater than the edge of this side. Now I'm going to have other videos that you guys can watch. Right before this will be for doing collisions and testing coordinates, which you guys have played around with a lot. So this shouldn't feel really new. But with our update, we want to check, for starting off, let's check this left edge. And in order to do that, we have to have this move, okay? I want my update just to be the movement. Actually, why don't we just call it move? That would make it a little bit more easier to understand. Okay, so I'm going to move that speed. So I'm going to have an X speed, and let's say it's just a random value between 3 and 7. And we'll have a Y speed, which is going to be a random value between 3 and 7, just to give us variation. Okay. So here, all I'm going to do is say this X position that I have, I'm just adding the this X speed to it that I have for my stuff. So when I create this move, logo, and then I call it, now it's moving across. Okay. I also want to do this for my y. So this dot y speed. Now it's moving across, but it just went off the edge. And I really don't like that color right now. Let's just make it, actually, we'll leave that color. We'll make the background black. There we go. Okay, now we want to keep it though within the bounds. And this is really like a lot of games are going to have this. Okay, so starting off, we are going to end up going some value. Now this x speed is a positive value. That's why I'm always moving to the right, because I'm adding it. Okay, but I want to check. So I want to say if this dot x, if that plus my, because remember I'm doing my right edge. So let's comment out so we can see it again. Okay, this, I'm checking this right edge against here. So I need to know if my x, which is this top left, now if I'm drawing this in the center, this would be done differently, but because I'm doing it in the top left, if this x plus the width of this shape, if that value, so if this was 5 and this was 5 for the width, if 10 was greater than the width of my canvas, then I need to switch directions. So I want to think in terms of values, but I don't want to actually fill in any values. So this dot x plus this dot width, that is this value right here, okay? I don't need to know that that's 70. I'm just going to call that variable. If that is greater than the width of the canvas, what do I want to do? I want x basically to switch directions. So I'm not actually, because I'm always adding here, I'm adding this x speed. If I get to the edge, so if x speed was 3, I'm adding 3 every single frame and draw. What I want is that instead of me adding a positive 3, I want to add a negative 3. So when I hit to the edge, I want to switch directions, which means instead of me adding a 3, I need to minus a 3. Minusing a 3 would be the same as adding a negative 3. So my x speed, if I could change it from a positive to a negative value, then that would have me switch directions. So I'm going to just say this dot x speed. And if I have a positive value and I multiply it by -1, I now have a negative value. If I have a negative value like -3 and I multiply it by a -1, what do I get? I get a positive value. That's positive 3. Okay, so now let's watch this happen. So now it's moving. Oop, it just bounced. But I lost it on the left because now I have to do the opposite. Okay, so when I take that away, now I need to check the left edge against the left side of the canvas. Okay, and when that happens, I want to switch the direction again. Now, if it's negative, because it would be moving to the left, I'm minusing, if 3 was my speed, I'm minusing 3. Once I get to that edge, that's when I want to change the direction. So I want it to go from a -3 to a +3, okay? So this conditional can actually act for that also. That means that I'm going to have to use a complex conditional. So instead of just doing this, I need to do this, or that's why I want 2 pipes. The pipes are the key. If you hit shift, it's the key right above the enter or the return key on your keyboard. Okay, 2 pipes. They're straight vertical lines. I want this dot x. If that is less than 0, I want to switch directions. So now let's watch this move. There we go. That's doing pretty good. Okay. So this is the initial DVD logo. The piece that you guys are going to do, because this is not a walkthrough, this is a walkthrough challenge. I walk through how to do the X, switching directions. I want you guys now to, on comment, out the Y speed and have it switch directions for the Ys. So when it gets down to the bottom, you are checking that value against the canvas, and then it's switching directions. And when it gets to the top, it's switching directions. Okay, that's what I want you guys to do for this walkthrough challenge, which will get us most of the way to being able to have this be the DVD logo thing. All right, so good luck. Have fun.